back. Today I thought you'd enjoy seeing how I quilt a cross-stitched quilt. This quilt was hand cross-stitched by my customer's grandmother, and they wanted to preserve this. I don't know what it was originally meant to be, but the family wants to preserve the grandmother's work and be able to see it on a daily basis. So they decided to have this quilted into a 96-inch by 112-inch quilt. It's beautiful. I quilted this in 2 passes. The first pass outlining all the major cross-stitch motifs with invisible thread, which you'll see me do later on in the video. And then the second pass through, I used an embroidery thread, a white 40 weight polyester thread, to stitch motifs, quilt motifs in between the cross-stitch areas. I think all in all, it turned out to be a beautiful quilt. This quilt has 80/20 white batting, and the results, I think you'll agree, are pretty spectacular. So here we go with the actual quilting. Again, this is the first pass where I tack down the major elements of cross stitch using an invisible thread. In this case, a YLI brand invisible thread called Whisper Touch. I really like this thread. It's strong, it's lightweight, it's truly invisible. It doesn't have hardly any shine to it, and if your nose is more than 6 inches from the surface of the quilt, you really can't see it. But what I like about this is it creates kind of a 3D effect. It makes all the outlined areas pop. It just gives them definition. And I really, really love seeing that, not just in this quilt, but a number of other hand embroidered quilts that I've quilted. You'll see, hang with me to the end of the video. I'll show you some pictures of other embroidered quilts that I've quilted using pretty much the same technique, where I go on a first pass with the invisible thread, and then the second pass through the quilt, I use an embroidery thread to fill in the areas between the embroidery. I like the definition that this gives, and it's so simple to do. Got a little boring on a quilt this big, but was so worth it. It turned out just gorgeous. So because this is invisible thread, I didn't feel the need to tie off in between those areas. You really can't see how I traveled from area to area, where there'll be a bigger gap at the end of the little hooks where I travel from one motif to the other, and I will be doing a jump there, and you'll see that. Had I, stopped and tied off and cut thread and then moved to the new start position and locked my stitches and trimmed my thread and went, that would have taken an enormous amount of time. And since I charge by the hour, doing it this way, you'll see right now, saved my customer so much time. And it's secure, and it's invisible, and you'll never know. I actually like this better because it leaves less of a knot. So I trim on the top as I go, and then as I roll the quilt, I trim on the back side. So here I am stitching one of the areas in between the cross stitch areas. And again, I'm using a 40 weight white embroidery thread. So that's a white polyester. I like sulky, but you can use glide, you can use Madeira, you can use any kind of a quality embroidery thread, or even whether polyester is nice and strong, you can use rayon. Not quite as strong and has a little bit more of a sheen, but any of those will do nicely and will not damage a cotton quilt, not at all. Any of the modern quality embroidery threads are just wonderful to use on a quilt. So I'm going to show you the back side of this quilt, and again, hang with me. I'll have some other quilts, other embroidered quilts to show you toward the end. There's the back. Isn't that gorgeous? I love seeing the backs of quilts. I hope I'm not giving anybody any kind of motion sickness here. This is one of my favorites. It was a little baby quilt of other babies asleep under their blankets on their pillows. So I left the pillows poofy because I just thought it was perfect. Christmas quilt, again, invisible thread to outline the major elements in the embroidery. And in this case, I probably ditched the blocks. Invisible thread is also an awesome thread to use for ditching, because then if you're out of the ditch even a little bit, you'll never see it. It does a really, really beautiful job. So thanks for sticking with me. If you have any questions about embroidered quilts, leave it in the comments below. Please subscribe to my channel. It helped me make my time worthwhile in editing all these videos, and I hope to see you on the next one. Thank you.